They call him Seatin, the man of legends.
Hey boys and girls, what is up? It is Seatin here. On today's video we're going to be doing a comparison of Wildstar and Rift. Now one of the things that I get asked like pretty much all of the time for the last kind of month or so is, what is a better game, Wildstar or Rift? Because as you may or may not know, I have played both games very extensively. In Wildstar I have over about 2k rating PvP wise on my Spellslinger. I've cleared genetic archives and possibly going on to the 40-man raiding, so I've kind of dominated that. Pretty much done everything there is to do apart from the 40-man raid, which is Datascape, but then again I'm not really too interested in doing that for reasons that I'll explain later in the video. In Rift I've pretty much cleared all of the content that there is apart from a few of the tier 3 raids, which are the more harder ones, which personally, you know, I'm not too interested in clearing. But yeah, so I have extensive experience in both of the games in pretty much every aspect. I've also got like almost max rank characters. I've got like 3 rank 80 plus characters, so yeah, I'm fully decked out on the PvP side of Rift as well. So I'm gonna look at the games from 3 perspectives: a casual perspective, a hardcore PvP perspective, and a kind of hardcore, semi-hardcore PvE perspective. So from a casual perspective, somebody who maybe has, I want to say 1 hour a day to log in and do stuff and progress their character that way. Now, what Wildstar has at the moment is it really doesn't have that much content for casuals. You have 3 different endgame zones that have a variety of dailies in, and you have adventures. Now, apart from paths and achievement hunting and other sort of missed stuff such as housing, you don't really have anything else. So as a casual player or as like a raider in my downtime, I don't really have any reason to log into Wildstar at all. If you want to do PvP, you really do need to kind of keep on hitting at it and kind of get very immersed into the game. And the same with the PvE, you know, if you have an hour to commit, you're not going to progress through dungeons. The only thing you're going to be able to do are adventures and dailies, 2 activities which, to be honest, you know, I'm not going to lie, they suck. They're ridiculously boring. We've seen them a billion times in MMOs. Adventures sounded cool, but they turned out to be just really boring and repetitive and something you need to constantly farm. So yeah, as a casual, there's pretty much nothing to do in Wildstar. Whereas Rift, a lot, because the current tier of content has progressed on so far, you just have so much that you can do. You have strongholds, you have zone events, you have great hump rifts, you have chronicles, you have dungeons, you have like tier 1 and possibly tier 2 raids, you have like artifact hunting events like unstable artifacts, you have dimensions, there's so much cool stuff that I'm just, bounty artifacts, just so much cool stuff that I can't be asked to list all of them. But there is a lot more to do for casual players in Rift and Wildstar. So if you're a casual player, only have an hour or so to commit a day, then I'd say at the moment Rift is definitely a better game for you. Now this is, just as a reminder guys, all of what I'm talking about is the current state of the game. So this is kind of like early August, 2 and a bit months into Wildstar, and you know, we're a bit more along the line down in Rift. But I'm going to go on and talk about more stuff anyway. So in regards to Endgame PvP, now I think Wildstar's PvP, at its core, the combat, is so much more fun. It's very engaging, you have to be very reactive, and as a result PvP generally feels a lot more satisfying when you pull stuff off successfully. However, the problem is there's not really any progression in PvP. So basically the way that it works is, to progress in PvP you constantly have to win to get your rating up. You have a rating, if you lose your rating goes down, if you win it goes up. So basically it really sucks for people who are bad. So people that are bad just won't get the gear at all. People that are good at the game will get more gear, so they just trump the people that are bad. There's no kind of, you invest a certain amount of time and you are guaranteed to get the best gear. You know, there's no way that you can do that. You physically have to be good at the game to get better gear, which just makes you stomp the lower geared people harder. So that kind of sucks. And if you're like a kind of very MMORPG savvy PvPer, aka you're good at the game, then you can get like max gear and everything in about a day. I know that because I've done it on like 2 characters. It's really easy to get max gear. And you get max gear and you go, oh, so what? Whereas Rift's system is a bit more what people would call grindy. You have to PvP, get your rank up, and the more you rank up, the better gear you unlock. But regardless of which, no matter, you can invest time and get gear as a reward. If you're good at the game, you're going to get to max rank faster. But, you know, if you're a bad player, if you just constantly keep on playing, you could eventually get the better gear and become a better player. So, yeah, that's kind of my view on it. I don't really... I like Wildstar's PvP. A bit more of an imbalance exists. I mean, neither game has like a perfect balance or good balance. But the thing about Wildstar's PvP is like I've done it all in a day. I want more of it. You know, it just feels like I'm meeting a bit of a loose end. And also, Wildstar's PvP is very, very frustrating when you keep on losing. Like, it is just ridiculously frustrating to get knocked down by these high-geared players and then just not being able to build yourself back up. Because when you're kind of around those higher ranks and aiming for like the top tier of gear, it's like you have to get like 5 wins to every 1 loss to make some sort of gain on the rating, and that is pretty damn difficult. So yeah, just my thoughts on PvP. Like, Wildstar PvP, for me, it's a bit more fun. It's also a bit more imbalanced, but then Rift doesn't have the best balance. The way I describe Rift's PvP is a 100-way game of rock, paper, scissors. So whatever combo you have, there is a combo that can beat it, or shut it down, or just totally annihilate it. So something like that. So for example, a lot of people say Warlord's OP. Well, Warlord's OP, generally speaking, until you get a good Dominator, which is a mage. And then they can shut down the warrior playing a Warlord spec really easily. You can just drain all their energy and keep them drained, and then when they sort of start to recover a bit more energy, you can just like CC them until you get your big energy drain cooldowns on, and it's just so easy to control a warrior on a Dominator. And then you have OP DPS range specs like maybe Pyro Inquisitor, and like a good Assassin or Warlord can shut them down. So there's pretty much like a combo to beat everything. I'm not going to talk about this too much more. Apart from Physicians, Physicians are just pretty damn OP across the board. They do a bit more healing than they should at the moment, and I mean, try and have kind of lightly addressed that they're looking at ways that they can nerf that, so, you know, they're dedicated to balancing the game. But also, one thing that Rift has over Wildstar is Wildstar only really has free battlegrounds or war fronts, or however you want to call them. So stuff does become really, really repetitive very easy. Whereas Rift has about, I believe it's about 12 in the roster, and then you have stuff like Conquest, the open world PvP dailies, and, you know, a few other things that you can throw in there. I actually haven't been on a PvP server in Wildstar, so I don't really know too much about that area of open world PvP, but I've seen some really good videos and that looks enjoyable. However, there doesn't look like there's a sustaining population on the majority of PvP servers. So if you're going for open world PvP, then neither of these games, go to Arcade. That is my honest suggestion. So, let's move on to Endgame PvE. So we're talking about the more maybe semi-hardcore, hardcore raiders that have time to devote to the game. Now, my honest opinion in this is Wildstar's, like, actual raids are... The bosses themselves are a lot better designed and more fun just because of the combat system. Like, I find them really, really enjoyable. Like X89 and Phagemore and sort of the Phageborn Convergence, definitely some of the most fun fights I've ever done in any MMO. Like, they were so good, they were very enjoyable. Just the quirk the Wildstar's raiding has is it requires a lot of time and a very hardcore mentality. You don't have any combat reses in Wildstar, and while this sounds like a really awesome hardcore idea, in practice it kind of sucks, because like a lot of the 20-man encounters are very tightly tuned, and that's what you need to make challenging raids. You need tightly tuned encounters, but when you have tightly tuned encounters and an MMORPG and no combat reses, this means basically if one person dies, maybe 1 or 2 people, and especially some of the later bosses in GA, you just wipe. You can't do anything, you wipe. And this is you know, it sounds like it sounds pretty casual, but this really sucks having no combat reses, because you would not believe the amount of times somebody DCs or maybe crashes due to a graphical bug, and then you just have to wipe it because you can't make the enrage or DPS check. So that really sucks. And also the achievement process to get to the raids is very difficult and demanding on a lot of people, and creates what I like to call kind of a lot of disparity between guilds. Like, for example, you need to be attuned to raiding, and the attunement process is it's fairly damn long and challenging. You need to basically master all the adventures and dungeons and get like a certain level and clear them in a very fast time. Now, what happens is generally in a guild you'll get about 10 or maybe 5 to 10 people that have done the achievement, and then the rest of the guild is maybe slacking behind because they have like full-time commitments. So then those people, they can't get attuned to do the raid fast enough. The 5-10 people that have got attuned, they go, oh, you know, bugger this, I'm going off to the insert higher guild here because I can join their raid force straight away. And then these raid forces obviously over accrue. Some people get very frustrated because they're like, oh, I've spent so much time getting attuned and now I can't raid, I'm gonna rage quit the game. And that's what happens a lot. We have been through so many people in our Wildstar raiding guild just because that happened. And also you have like because essentially you need to build a 40-man team in Wildstar if you have any sort of endgame ambition. So you have that awkward niche between having like 20 people tuned and 40 people attuned, because there's an odd sort of, you know, anywhere between like 1 to 19 people left out of raiding, and then they might go elsewhere. So that is also very annoying. You need a very, very high level of commitment in Wildstar for raids that make you essentially very frustrated, just because if somebody dies, the raid wipes, and that just makes people very angry and hostile to each other. So fights when people don't disconnect, somebody fucks up, screws up, even I didn't say fuck, I'm trying to watch the language. Totally neglected that. But anyway, back to the point. So yeah, it also makes for a very hostile raiding atmosphere. One thing that I noticed between the two games is people are a lot more mad in Wildstar. Like, if somebody dies, they will rage so hard at them, and it creates really, really hostile and terrible raiding environments. And that's one of the primary reasons I don't want to go into 40-man raiding, because I know if like a couple of people, it's just going to be frustrating at the end of the day. People are going to disconnect. It's 40 players. People are going to have crashes for tightly tuned encounters. It's not going to be a pleasant experience. So yeah, that's kind of the reason why I've shied away a bit from Wildstar raiding. I may go back in the future, but anyway, on to the point. So Rift is a lot better as a casual game. You can get to level 60, and within a couple of hours you can be in a raid. You can be in Triumph of the Dragon Queen, Intrepid Halls. You can quickly advance on to Frozen, Tempest, Endless Eclipse. They're all very easy raids. And then you have loads more to do. You have like Planebreaker Bastion, the Infinity Gate, Grim Awakening, and then all the Bindings of Blood raids. So there's a lot more to do in Rift, and it's a lot more easily accessible. So I'd say, for raiding wise, if you're really, really hardcore, then Wildstar, it's the game for you. Without a doubt, definitely. But Rift, if you're more of a casual raider, maybe you have a full-time job, a family, and just want to kind of log in occasionally and get some progress done, then you can do that. There are ways to do that. It's a lot more accessible. Currently there's a lot more content. I mean, which content is better is subjective. Personally, you know, I think some fights are amazing in Rift and some aren't. Like Warden Frax is definitely one of the best fights I've ever done. That fight is just insanely well made. Same with Inya Katar and Abominus, and fights like Volan. There are tons and tons of epic fights, and all of the Bindings of Blood ones are really awesome. So there's a lot of really epic stuff that you can easily get your hands on in Rift. You know, I'd say the raiding, as I said, if you're more hardcore, go Wildstar, but if you're casual and kind of there's still a good challenge level in Rift, especially in the tier 2, tier 3 raids, but I'd say that Rift kind of is in a bit of a better position for more enjoyable raiding, just because they do cater to a semi-casual audience, and that is the majority of MMO players, in all brutal honesty. So a couple of things I wanted to finally talk about is the development of both of the games. Now, Wildstar actually started their development in 2005 and released their game in 2014, aka a couple of months ago. And the content they have at the moment is, you know, I'm not going to be around it. It's really lacking for the time they've spent in development. They spent 9 years in development. The game is fun. The lore is amazing. Like, I love the lore in Wildstar. But 9 years, seriously. Now, if we contrast that to Rift, Rift started its development in 2006. So that is 1 year after Wildstar. Rift released in 2011 and has just pushed out so much content. So this makes me really skeptical for the future of Wildstar and how they're going to be able to keep up with the pace that games like Rift, WoW, and just other games are really setting. I mean, WoW doesn't really set a good pace, but it does okay. It's had some really good raids in their expansion. But that's one of the things that really does concern me about Wildstar. They've had a lot of time to work on the game, and for the time that they've had, they haven't delivered. That, I'm going to just put it very bluntly, in my opinion, 9 years to do a game, and they've done a lot worse job than Rift has. I mean, my dream would be if, like, Rift had Wildstar's combat system, but then Wildstar does have a lot of flaws with its combat system. And there are kind of pros and cons to both the combat systems as well, which I'll talk about. Like, one of the things that I really like about Rift is the complexity of the soul trees. Now, this is just one thing I really missed. Like, for Wildstar, essentially you have like 3 or 4 buttons, maybe 5 in certain classes to your DPS rotation, and then you have maybe like a few interrupts and movement abilities. You have a total of 8 abilities. Whereas in Rift, I can have as many abilities as I want. Most of my specs have like between about 15 to 40 different buttons. Maybe more in certain specs like Dominator. I love having a lot of buttons. There are ways that you can reduce sort of the amount of buttons and abilities that you have using certain macros and easier to play specs, but I like the level of complexity that's there, and that's what makes it very enjoyable for me to play, because like even though in Wildstar I'm spamming a very simple rotation and moving out, in Rift I really feel like I'm dominating, just because I know all these complex rotations and ways to play. So personally, I like Rift. There's a lot more flexibility to the class and soul system as well. That's one of the things that I kind of missed in Wildstar, that it was kind of like just, you know, 1 DPS spec, 1 healing spec. Granted, you can switch some of the abilities out, but still, it's fairly standardized. You know, you've always got kind of the same base abilities, and you're switching a few out depending on the fight. I also kind of really don't like that at the same time as well, that you have to like constantly keep on switching around your LASs. I mean, it kind of sounds like cool, like, oh yeah, I need to use these and these abilities to deal with this situation, but in practice, it's just pretty annoying that you have to switch it like every 5 minutes for another fight. Just my personal opinion, and that's just me being mainly lazy. I mean, there are add-ons to help you do it a bit easier, but it's just a bit annoying at the end of the day. I like having a very well-built spec and class that can deal with like pretty much any fight, and if it can't deal with that fight, then guess what, I can change to a completely different spec or role to deal with that. You know, I've just got so many different builds in Rift. It's crazy, and I did miss like all of the the diversity between that. So those are my honest opinions on the game. My opinion would be, like, if you're looking for something to play now, if you haven't already been playing Rift for the last year, jump into Rift, play Rift up until the expansion. Nightmare Tide is going to be coming out in like 2-3 months. The expansion is just, it looks insane at the moment, just so damn good. Play the expansion, have a great time in that until it hits a content lull, and then go back to Wildstar. Most of the issues that are persistent in the game at the moment will probably have been fixed then, and then you can play the game for enjoyment. There will also be a ton of new content, and I think that's really, in terms of like, if you want to genuinely enjoy the games, that is what I would do. If I was in your position, that's what I would totally recommend. If I was somebody that had never played either one of the games, play Rift up until the expansion. You got tons to do in Storm Legion. You know, the stuff you'll get like playing your achievement levels will be very beneficial. Going into Nightmare Tide, that expansion's just going to be it looks ridiculously good. Who could say they might totally screw it up? But at the moment, the bar is high on that one, and I am very excited for that. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, that is my comparison between both of the games. Wildstar, if you are very hardcore, yes, it is definitely the game for you. Rift, if you're semi-hardcore casual, it's definitely the game for you. So, end summary, hope you enjoyed the video, guys. Have an absolutely wonderful day and take care of yourself. Bye.